is Gavin Tapp, and welcome to the ACT government-hosted Google Hangout on open data and civic hacking. We've assembled a panel of local experts in this field today for a bit of a discussion on topics under this umbrella. It's an area of activity that's really picking up speed, particularly in Canberra, and taps into a lot of different communities that we have here, such as the startup community, the tech community, of course a lot of government agencies that are based here and involved in publishing data. So I'm just going to quickly introduce the different participants we have today. Going first, we have, well, first introduction is Alex Zalia. Alex is a civic hacker cracking the code of what makes government and democracy tick. His projects have provided greater insight into many sources of open data, from government spending and political donations to freedom of information requests and local bus timetables. Oops, wrong window. We have Michael Phillips. Michael Phillips is the manager of the e-government cluster at NICTA. The cluster is fostering innovative ICT, Australian ICT into governments, primarily through collaborative projects. Oops, should put that on silent. Next up we have Pia Waugh. Pia Waugh is the Open Data and Open Government Ninja and the lead coordinator of GovHack Australia. Steve DaCosta is the executive director of Link Digital. Stephen has run Canberra small businesses, Link Digital, for the last 12 years, delivering internet-based projects for many government clients over that time. His company supports and commercially benefits from civic hacking in a range of ways. And our final player here, last but not least, is Toby Wild. Toby is a web developer and avid social hacker. Toby is interested in making civic information more fun. And just to give you a bit more information about my role and where I fit, I am part of the ACT government's Government Information Office, and we have an interest in seeing more civic hacking and use of the data that the ACT government releases via the data.act.gov.au, that's right, web portal. And just heading into the first of our topics that we're going to cover today, I just wonder if I could go to the panel and ask them to give a bit of a brief description on, or a definition, I guess, for people that are new to this space on what civic hacking actually is. So Alex, I might jump to you for that one. Could you give us a bit of a definition, please?
Yeah, so civic hacking is kind of this trend at the moment where people with technical skills are applying them to improving their local communities, and this is enabled by governments releasing information. For example, bus timetables have provided people with the ability to make their own app that displays those bus timetables, tells you where to get to the bus. So it's about, you know, little ways that you can repurpose information to make something new and innovative.
Good, thank you. And I guess to get a bit of a participant perspective and definition on what it is to be a civic hacker, we might just jump across to Toby. So Toby, you were recently involved in the National GovHack event that was on, and I believe you've also given some talks recently on your experience of being a civic hacker. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I was one of the participants at the latest GovHack event, and it's just a lot of fun getting boring, everyday civic data that gets thrown out every day in spreadsheets and then making it fun and interesting. Like taking how much money we spend on military and then turning that into how many soldiers could you, how many cricket teams of soldiers could you make for that money. It just makes the data more interesting for people, and that's what I really love about it.
Yeah, good, thank you. And I'm just wondering, in terms of how this serves as a bit of a bridge between the community and a government, Michael Phillips, whether perhaps you could add something there on how you see this sort of civic hacking movement sort of fitting in with government in the way government might make better use of this data or might engage with this sector. How does government sort of define civic hacking?
Yeah, thanks, Gav. Actually, I'm not too sure how government defines civic hacking, but I think what civic hacking demonstrates is alternative ways of delivering really effective outcomes. The whole sort of genesis of hacking was, rather than the negative sort of aspect of hacking, it's just using what's available to deliver new insights or new value. And I think civic hacking demonstrates that in a really good way outside of mainstream bureaucracy.
Great, thank you. And Pia, if I can just jump quickly to you, I know you've been active in this space for a while. Where do you think civic hacking has evolved from, I think, and do you think it's changed much over the last sort of 3 to 5 years?
Look, I think civic hacking is just the next iteration in a very broad evolution that's been happening for some time. We sort of had the hacker culture from the 60s and 70s, which is sort of all about being able to build your own and not have another person or company's way of doing something get in the way of you doing things your way. And it sort of really spawned this very academic, in the first case, sort of based community, but later on much broader community of people who just love to do creative, clever stuff with technology. And I think that we sort of saw that evolve into what became the open source and free software community. And that community is, it has been able to see software developed that's broken down every traditional barrier of collaboration across the world to make really, really great stuff for the benefit of society, but also for the benefit of individuals. It's kind of like a next generation of enlightened self-interest, I guess, is what largely tends to spark and fuel and keep sustainable a lot of these movements. That's kind of moved on into open knowledge, and I mean, Wikipedia was the next big sort of open knowledge iteration of that, and now we're starting to see the evolution of more open and collaborative approaches to government. So I think what we're seeing is that these sort of approaches of mass collaboration and distribution of work to deal with common issues has started to sort of permeate into every aspect of society, and it's a really exciting thing. So now what we've seen, I think, in the last few years is that we've moved from technology and geekiness being something that's been very, very niche and very, as in within how society sees it, to something that's being more seen as and understood to be the driver of modern democracy, society, economies, markets, and that recognition of the value of technology and thus of geeks, I think is a really positive thing. So civic hacking, I think, is where you start to see people come together across many disciplines. So they can be developers, they can be admins, they can be analysts, data visualization people, maker, culture, but right through to storytellers and music makers and anyone who has a problem to solve or anyone that wants to get engaged in improving their society can get involved in civic hacking and work with people from different disciplines to actually solve problems. So it's starting to spawn, it's taking that old, I guess, hacker culture, and it started to really pull that into a mainstream benefit. This concept of being able to route around damage has, I think, gone very much mainstream.
Great. Thank you, Pia. And I think that's a nice sort of encapsulation of how we've arrived at where we are now. I'm just wondering if I jump to Steve DaCosta, you run a business that kind of works in the development space, and I just wonder how you see the link between a community run or community themed hacking organization or community, and what the links are with the commercial world and how they kind of relate. Is there any tension between the two, or are there ways that they work together?
So, I mean, there's tension in everything, but that's where the opportunity also is. And I think there's a whole range of reasons why any business that's in sort of a digital space would get a lot of benefit out of working with people involved in civic hacking or open data initiatives. I think, coming back to the definition, for me, there's often said that information is power, and civic hacking is just people empowering themselves to get a better interpretation of government data, but sometimes just their own personal benefit, as Toby said, to make it a little bit more fun. Now, what I see is that if you start looking at what's going on in that space, what you'll find is quite often the most progressive clients that you might like to work with, the most progressive projects that you might like to work on, and certainly the most progressive developers or technical staff that you might like to hire. So there's lots of intangible sort of benefits that just sort of you can absorb from that environment and that community of interest. But there's also, real commercial benefits for a company like mine. I actually hired Alex recently because he's one of the rare specialists in a particular technology that Pia, as a client of mine, needs to have access to. And so there's that sort of mutual interest. Once you really understand what the demand is for these sorts of services, you can provide a niche supply of products and services that really capture that demand.
Yeah, right. Well, that sort of leads on, I think, into the idea of what are Civic hackers actually building. And I might just jump back to Alex Adlier, because I know you've been involved in a few projects in this space. I wonder if you can just pick out a couple of examples that you think illustrate it. Yeah.
So my favourite suite of projects is, of course, the Open Australia project. So one of the first Open Australia projects was around taking the data from planning authorities, including the ACT Planning and Land Authority, and turning that into a service where you get an email if a development application is occurring nearby, and then that provides you, as Stephen said about empowering, it tells you, you have this many days to respond to this, and actually gets people involved in the democratic process. And there's a couple of other ones. We've had the Right to Know project, which makes freedom of information applications easier. And also with the election, recently we had the election leaflet project, where people would send in the election leaflets that they received, and it actually, again, it's about using these tools to empower people. It actually lets you see the different messages the political parties targeted to different areas, and the way they were sometimes using the same message all across the country, promising the same thing to everybody, when really they could only deliver that in so many places. So it's very interesting how a little bit of technology can provide a lot of new information that people perhaps haven't accessed before.
Yeah, good, thank you. And I'm just interested to see some examples that came out of GovHack this year. So Toby, perhaps if I can go to you first and then Pia. Perhaps Toby, if you could tell us about your own project perhaps from this year, and any other projects that you thought were particularly good examples of use of civic hacking or use of open data.
Yeah, kind of a bit in contrast to what Alex was saying, where a lot of his were focused towards the kind of empowering the public to do good in their area. The one that I made was about getting them drunk, using microbrewery data and police station data and hospital data, just mashing it all up into something fun. It'll probably never get used, but if someone wants to find out where their local police station is, there's an app for that, and that the app is out there because the civic data is out there, which is great.
And what for you do you think was the most interesting hack that you saw somebody else produce this year at GovHack?
This year's GovHack was all kind of a blur for me. I was awake for a lot of it, so I've kind of forgotten a lot of it. One of my favorite ones from the year before was using the hotspot data, finding out where bushfires were, and then plugging that in real time onto a map so that you could plan an escape route from a fire front, which I thought was just a really fantastic, useful way of using some awesome civic data. Yeah,
okay. Look, we might go to Pia then. You were one of the lead organisers for GovHack this year, and I just wondered what you thought the highlights were in terms of the best examples of civic hacking and use of open data.
Sure. Look, I think for starters, I mean, there were 130 projects out of the weekend, and to be honest, almost all of them were exceptional in some way or another. So I do encourage people to go and check it out at hackerspace.govhack.org. A couple that I'll throw out there, though, just to give a bit of an impression of the different sort of things you could do. One of the teams up in, I think it was at the Gold Coast, created a system to make it really simple to, for instance, to submit a plan.
Oh, we've just
have
lost Pia
that go
there.
through the system of the Queensland
Sorry, Pia, we just lost you for about 2 seconds then. Could you just go back to what the Gold
Council,
Coast did?
and then followed up. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're just coming back. We lost you just as you started to mention the Gold Coast Council.
Sorry, they did a planning system so that you could actually submit your... Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They did a system where you submit a planning request and then track that planning request. I think you're going to need to put someone else on silent. Anyway, and it just made it easy for the Gold Coast City Council to track and manage planning alerts, which was quite good. Another team took data about how people die in Australia, a fairly morbid topic normally, and created a just cute application so that people could do comparisons between, what might be the things that most kill people, which called Deathmatch Me, which was just kind of fun. One of my favorites from this year actually did a way to rate the openness of agencies and governments in Australia. And it was very interesting because they looked at a number of things from data through to FOI requests, to a number of criteria to come up with a league tabling approach to openness. That same team actually digitized the entire federal budget last year, which was also a pretty amazing thing to see. But I mean, some of the other sort of hacks, and the reason that we use the term hacks rather than apps is to get a much broader range of outcomes. Last year, one of the teams actually took the high and low temperatures from around all the capital cities in Australia and did laser cut sort of jewelry like this, so that the inner circle was the minimum temperature and the outer circle was the maximum temperature. So you got these kind of pieces of jewelry, so you could actually hold Sydney over the top of Melbourne and have a bit of a giggle. But it was, a really great way to visualize and make more tactile weather data, which was really cool, and some amazing data visualizations of climate change and other phenomena. So there's a lot of different things that come out of it, and there's a lot of different competition goals. So people should go and check out some of the videos and see what some of the teams did. We also specifically asked that the teams made their code publicly available, as well as did a video this year about their hack. So anyone, whether you're technical or not, can go and peruse the ideas. And if you are technical, then you can sometimes pick up the code and actually continue working on it, or go and chat to the team. So we're really happy with the outcomes from this year.
Great, thanks, Pia. Michael Phillips, just heading over to you. NICTA have been a supporter of GovHack and sort of similar events, and I just wonder if you could explain the philosophy, I guess, behind NICTA's sort of role in those in supporting those types of events.
Yeah, thanks, Gav. I think, as Pia and probably everybody said, I think open data and hacking is at the kind of forefront of advancing innovation into government, and I mean, that's really what we're on about. We want to see government much more open to innovation, to improve public administration, but also to grow industry, to create new opportunities and generally improve the country. And it's difficult for government in an environment where there's a lot of risks associated with perceived failure. So ways of them seeing how innovation can work and deliver value. GovHack's a great example, and as I said earlier, collaborative projects is also a low risk, low cost way, and legal, within the procurement guidelines, way of them exploring new ideas and whether they would work in their environment or not.
Gavin, I think you muted.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you then, Gav.
How's that now?
Better.
Better. Okay, great. Michael, just a sort of follow-up question. I'm just wondering if you have any examples of sort of public-private partnerships that are making use of this data, or perhaps have evolved from this civic hacking movement.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if the first project that I'll talk about evolved from the hacking movement, but it's certainly in that flavour. We've published a case study on a project called Mobile Canberra, where we brought together a startup, the ACT government, and some expertise out of NICTA to build a mobile service platform for using the ACT open data environment. And so that was a great example of testing some thinking that the ACT government had about how to do this, untested thinking, seeing whether it actually had legs or not. And through that project, they were able to determine, the right way to go with that kind of approach, mobile services, much better informed, so that when they decide to enter into it seriously, they won't fail. Won't try things and find that it didn't work. So it's been a really good example, and that case study's published. We're also currently running a digital innovation competition for the ACT government as well, which is, a bit of the same, where we're looking for challenges within the government and then asking innovators to come up with ideas, and that might involve open data, but it could involve other aspects of government operations as well.
Great, thank you. It's good to get a little taste of what's happening in Canberra just then. Of course, GovHack's been active in Canberra for a couple of years, and it's sort of the national home of the movement. If we can, I'd just like to go to the panel and get a sense of what some of the international activities, if that sort of relates to this space. Alex, I know you're involved in the open knowledge movement, and you've recently been immersed in a conference, OKCon. I just wonder if you could tell us a bit about what that conference is aims to do, and the sort of people that go to that, and what sort of comes out of it.
Yeah, so the Open Knowledge Conference was held in Geneva recently, and that brought together people from the different open knowledge communities. So we're talking about open data and open source, but of course there's also opening cultural institutions. And one of the big themes this year was around opening aid and international development, information and data. And one of my favorite thing that I learned was that the World Bank actually did a study about the demand for open data in communities that have no computers. So all they did was they printed out the spreadsheets and took them to the communities and saw, do these people who actually, are they interested in the data about their community? And it turns out that they were, in the same way that people in Canberra are interested in financial data. And these people actually went on to make posters and radio spots, non-profit radio spots, to explain to the people in their community what was going on, where these contracts had blown out and they had realized that a school wasn't actually getting built, but nobody had told them, but there was data stored at the World Bank that's there. And yes, that was one area. The other big area was around open academic data. Of course, Geneva being near CERN, we got to hear a lot about how the international collaboration of the CERN organization is based on the principles of openness, and of course there's an increased push to have open access to academic publications, academic data, so that civic hackers can learn from things that professional scientists are doing, and in fact maybe they can reproduce that or create their own scientific investigations that would increase the knowledge that we all have. So yes, so there's a lot of different ways around the world that people are embracing hacking, civic hacking, and it's not just about apps, although being a technologist, of course I love making civic apps.
Great, thanks Alex. Look, we're almost approaching the end of the scheduled time for this, so what I'd like to do is just kind of quickly run through everyone on the panel here and just, I guess, get a very brief comment from you on what you think is perhaps the most important or interesting aspect of this community and this data, or perhaps your prediction of what you think might happen over the next few years. Just to throw somebody in the deep end, how about we go to Pia first, then Toby, then Stephen, Michael, and then Alex to finish. So Pia, what are your closing thoughts on this space for today?
Look, I think recognizing that this is part of a bigger movement, and recognizing that this is not a bubble or or something temporary, but rather it's something that is going to continue to be built and continue to grow momentum is a very important thing. I think, and a large part of that is that this is the natural and appropriate response to dealing with how the modern world works. New opportunities, new challenges, new issues for society are not going to be able to be dealt with by government in isolation or industry in isolation or individuals in isolation, but rather are going to be best dealt with by a collaborative approach that goes across every discipline and across every sector. So, this movement, I think, is as much about empowering individuals to take control, to hold the power plays in their society to account. It's as much about individual empowerment as it is about creating a better society and having a very effective society that's able to to be responsive to the new opportunities and challenges, and to have resilience in the face of those things as well. So I'm actually very excited about it. I think that there's a lot of movement at the station. It's never enough movement for some, but it's moving faster than it ever has been before. And I'm very excited to be a part of that movement and to be contributing to it both within and from without government. So I guess I invite people to check it out, get involved, and look at what they can do to contribute to improving their society for themselves and for the people around them.
Great, and if just to, I guess, give you a chance to plug the GovHack activity, what's the best place for people to keep in touch with that or to find out more?
Sorry. People can check out govhack.org for details, but they can also join the OKF, Open Knowledge Foundation Australia mailing list, where details about GovHack and indeed other open knowledge events around Australia will be posted. So that's au.okfn.org and govhack.org. And we'll be opening up information about GovHack 14 fairly soon, sometime in the next few weeks probably. So keep an eye for that, and we look forward to people getting involved. We're actually looking at GovHack 2014 being in July, and so put it in your diaries tentatively.
Good one, thanks, Pia. And Toby, just some closing thoughts from you, if you could.
I think Michael kind of touched on this, and it's something that John Sheridan mentioned in one of his blog posts a while ago, that government can't really innovate, because in order to innovate you need to fail, and failing costs money, and people don't like it when their government spends money on something they're going to fail on. So events like GovHack and all civic hacking projects, really, it's a way for governments to come there and say, wow, we couldn't do this because it may not have worked and we'd never get funding for it, but these people have done it, and it's either a proof of concept or we can use some of the code because it's open source, and I think it's just a fantastic way of moving government forward without spending any government money. I think it's fantastic.
Great, thank you. Steve DeCosta.
So I think the long-term interest for me, and there's a big commercial gain for anyone who gets involved in this space, I think, is that data is being created all the time in enormous quantities, and those who have access to the data can do lots with it, and they can create a certain context. While we've been talking about government data and open data and civic hacking in this sort of conversation here, the sorts of projects that occur in that space are occurring in large corporates who amass these massive troves of data. The real debate is, should they be allowed to hold that data? Should they be allowed to communicate a context without it being open for investigation and further interpretation by others? And I think that's where the empowerment, once it's learnt, once people know that they can work with data and they can understand it, they'll start to demand it all the more strongly from large corporates, from government, and it'll become quite a very strong movement, to the point where it becomes legislated and it's compulsory for government and corporates to publish their data sets.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Michael Phillips.
Thanks, Gav. I don't think I'm overstating it to say I think the evolution of technology is morphing at warp speed. We're sort of, I think, in a revolution that may only happen once in a generation, and the open data aspect is just one aspect of what's happening with technology. And my interest is government. What does that mean for government? And I think it actually means really dramatic things. The government is really it's difficult in government to capture the opportunities just because of the bureaucracy and the way processes have to work. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think you know, open data and civic hacking demonstrates the power of people, and the customers of government are people. And that's what's happened with other industries, you know, with you know, Amazon and so forth. Consumers have sort of taken control and are basically driving what's going on with the business. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen in government. And what we're talking about today is very much part of that whole revolution.
Great, thank you. And lastly to Alex.
Yeah, so I think we touched on it that, you know, there's a very broad international push for more openness, not only in government but in corporations, and this is going to enable new ways of doing things that people really hadn't considered before. So I think it's very exciting, not only for societal good, but to do these innovative things that actually push technology and science forward by having the building blocks that openness and the people toying around with civic hacking provides.
Great, thank you. Well, that's it for today. I'd like to thank my panel for joining us for this discussion on civic hacking and open data. This is something that I think the ACT government will be quite keen to do more on a range of topics. So hopefully you'll hear from us again soon on something. Thanks again to the panel, Alex, Michael, Pia, Stephen, and Toby. And we're signing out for now. Thanks,
Gav. Thanks, everyone else. Cheers.
Yeah.